Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for taking some time out to hear about World Mosaic. It is the brand new art curriculum that Nasco has partnered with Art Class Curator. And about a year ago is when we started talking about this, and I was excited then, but my excitement continues to grow the more that I do the webinars and the more that I talk to teachers about it and see the excitement about it. And based on where we're at in this crazy pandemic and virtual and hybrid and in-class learning, I am convinced that this is one of the greatest things that I have seen in my career at Nasco. So with that, I am going to turn this over to our co-host and Nasco's partner at Art Class Curator. Cindy Ingram is the founder and creator of Art Class Curator. She's the real deal and has absolutely made me a new believer in art connections. And I will let her talk a little bit more on that. Thank you, Cindy. And we got to unmute Cindy.
There we go. I muted myself because I didn't want you all to hear the dog barking, and then I could not get it back up. So welcome everybody. I'm so happy that you're here, and I can't say enough great things about Kris too. We've had such a great year working together, and what we've come up with is something really exciting. And so what we're going to talk about today is our new curriculum, but also we're going to talk about social emotional learning specifically. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of an overview on social emotional learning, and then I'm going to give you a lot of examples on how to take these ideas and bring them to your classroom. I'm going to give you some actionable examples that you can take and use. Even if you don't, if you don't get this curriculum, you'll still have some good ideas by the end of it. So let me get my slides up and running, and feel free to chat us in the chat box. It's not going to distract me. I like when people ask questions, and we will have a little bit of audience participation today. I'm going to have you do one of the activities, so be prepared for that so you can kind of experience what the students experience with these sorts of learning activities. So let me get my slides going. I can never do that and talk at the same time. Oh, you know what? I need permission to screen share. And I would love to hear, while I get that permission, where you're from, what grades you teach, and anything like that. So I'd love to hear your introductions into the chat. All right, got my slides up, and now I need to get my chat box back up. I hate that they close it when you screen share. All right, got it. Yes, we will be recording, and you'll get an email in a few hours. Once the recording gets processed and edited and all of that, it will get sent your way via email. All right, everyone can see my slides okay? Yeah? Okay, thank you. All right, so here's my little introduction slide. So I already said, go ahead and introduce yourself. I'd love to hear your favorite artwork too, if you have a favorite artwork. So my name is Cindy Ingram, and I created Art Class Curator. We just celebrated our 7th birthday, April 1st, 2014 was when I wrote my first blog post. And I am a former museum educator and also a former art teacher. And so when I was working in the art museums, I really loved the energy of spending quality time with works of art with kids. They would come in. At one time, one of my jobs was I was only a gallery teacher. I just spent all day in the gallery with all the tour groups that came in, and it was such great fun. And then they left. I never saw them again, but that 1 hour I got to spend with them was so delightful and so exciting. And then when I made my way into the classroom, I realized that connection with works of art, those discussions and those engaging activities that we did in the museum, I wanted that in my classroom too, but it doesn't quite transfer perfectly into the classroom. And so I would try to find resources for that. I would try to find resources on how to teach art history without lecture. all sorts of things, and I just couldn't find them on the internet. So finally I decided I would just create the thing that I had been looking for, and started putting up blog posts on the internet. We were formerly the art curator for kids way back when, and I would write, I would write posts about, artworks for certain themes, how artworks for the elements and principles of art, artworks from other cultures that are not just, the dead white guys. I put all of that onto the blog, and then eventually we created our membership site, as well as the Spark Hybrid Learning Curriculum, and our newest exciting curriculum, the Art Class Curator World Mosaic, which is the elementary curriculum, and then the Perspectives, which is the high school curriculum. So we're going to be talking about World Mosaic today. And so I have a first question for you. So I love hearing where you guys are all from. Looks like most of you are elementary, and we do have a middle school teacher. Lindsay, I would say that these lessons are modifiable for your middle school students, and you're going to get a lot of sort of ideas on art discussion techniques too, as well. But these are modifiable for your middle school students. But my question here for you is, what skills do you need in your day-to-day life? So think about, going about your life as an adult, managing your finances, managing your relationships, managing your parenting. What sort of things do you use on a day-to-day basis? So Lacey says listening skills. That I think is terribly important. Time management, communication, memory skills. Yeah, those are slowly going, or quickly going. It's like the minute I had children, it's like my memory just completely left me. I used to take such pride in my memory. Just not so much. And I started, I was thinking about my presentation for today, and I started to list. I was thinking about the last few days when I made this list, and I started to think about, every single skill that I was using. Not one of them, maybe one, I actually learned in school. There was not, a very little math. I had some math skills. There was some, some content skills, but most of it were things like empathy and listening and grit and resiliency, how to handle, what to do when you fall and how to get back up, what to do when you've got a relationship on the rocks, or when your parents are, when your children are freaking out, how do you deal with their emotions, all of that. And so this was my list I came up with. And then I used this, one of my favorite word art, smart arts on PowerPoint. And I was going to find a bunch of emotion pictures, but then I realized I had all these ridiculous ones of me. So I threw them all. We did a photo shoot last year, and those were the outtakes. So all the emotions of that was me in an hour of teaching a bunch of kids and doing a photo shoot. So, but you can see in here, goal setting and achievement, self-awareness, confidence, dealing with uncertainty, responsible decision-making, communication, collaboration, all of these things are embedded in our day-to-day life. And I think that me specifically, I wasn't taught most of these things as a child. I taught them through the hard way, through dealing with my trauma and dealing, all of this stuff. And then when I got to be an adult, I realized I don't know how to exist as an adult. I don't know how to do this. And it took me until I was in my 30s, probably, until I actually felt like maybe I could do this. Or maybe it was like 28, 29 was a turning point when I was like, okay, maybe I can handle myself as an adult. But before that, no. So I went through all my old photos. I was like, I need to find like a moody picture of me as a young adult. So this is the closest one I find. I don't even think I was in a bad mood that day, but it's the moodiest one I could find. But I was one of those students that was super academic. I was your teacher's pet. I was the one making straight A's. I was the one who was like obsessive about my class rank. And and then I left, I got to college, I left college, and I was like, what was all of that for? Like, that did not serve me whatsoever. I needed to know, like, what to do when you're rejected. Because, when you're a straight A student and you're an AP student, you don't get rejected. I did everything in my life not to get rejected. So, I didn't know how to handle myself. And so it took me a really long time to learn. And I'm really passionate about this because I think we could make our young adults in their 20s lives a lot easier if we teach them these really, really important skills. And so I love this buzzword of social emotional learning because this is going to provide our students with a little bit more of a foundation on how to manage, being a person in the world. And I tell this as my story because I don't want to speak for everyone else. This is just how I was. I'm sure there are some very put together 20-year-olds. I just was not one of them. So what social emotional learning is all of those things like dealing with relationships and how to communicate, how to understand yourself, what you believe in, what you value, what you're good at, how to handle yourself when you're knocked down, how to deal with your emotions in a productive way and not like numb them out and all of those things. There's so much that goes into that. And these are skills that we can practice in school. You looked like you wanted to say something for a minute, Kris, did you?
I just was writing down I always try to remember what the 5 core competencies are in CASEL: self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and relationships. And so I was sort of on the edge thinking that you were going to say those, and then you didn't, and it was okay, but then you clearly read my mind. So thank you
they're
for
on like
that.
the next slide. I was trying to do them all from memory too, even though they're on my next slide. So that process that students learn and how they use their knowledge and skills, how they develop their identity, how they manage their emotions, how they achieve goals, how they empathize with others, how they make decisions and create and nurture healthy relationships. And I think us in the art room, we are already doing this, with our art making, with our focus on experimentation with the media and, solving problems and been given sort of a problem to solve, and then they have to create a way to solve it. But there are other ways that we can do that through what we call at Art Plus Curator, art connection, which is what most people call art appreciation, but we're trying to like shift that terminology to art connection. And so we're going to talk a lot about how to do that through art connection. But when we make social emotional skills the cornerstone of your curriculum, then your students are more likely to attend school. They're more likely to receive better grades. They're less likely to have behavioral problems. They're going to be, healthier. They're going to have more caring communities, more academic success, more positive behavior. This stuff has been researched pretty heavily, and it's proven that this is a really positive way to approach teaching in all fronts. Not just as in your individual classroom, but like school wide in all of your initiatives on your campus. And we talk about social emotional learning. That's kind of what it's called now with the CASEL, the collaboration for academic
social and emotional learning. Yep.
But we've heard of things like they call them soft skills, or they'll call them 21st century skills, even though these skills have been used forever. College and career readiness encompasses a lot of the SEL stuff. So this is sort of a bigger umbrella that covers all of that stuff. And it's also important to me too, because I'm a little bit of a Brene Brown junkie, and I read about in one of her books, she was talking about how she's doing research on how well people know their emotions. And she figured out that most people really only know or are able to identify or able to recognize 3 different emotions in themselves. So it's happy, sad, and mad. And then beyond that, they don't really have the vocabulary to really understand what they're feeling. But then she said to actually be a functioning adult, you need to have 27 to 30 different emotions that you can identify and recognize in yourself. So that is a huge gap. And so we love to talk about emotions, because I think the more we talk about it, the more we take away the stigma of it, We teach our kids to just shut down their emotions. If they're feeling strong emotions, we do what we can to make them stop. We don't teach them how to work their way through them. So all of these things are things that we can work on. And so we use at our class curator something called we call it the I feel wheel. That we didn't invent this. This is our modification of it, the feelings wheel. But if you want to download this for use in your classroom, you can do that at artclasscurator.com/ifeel. And you can get a free download of this chart. But it's a really good one to use when you're looking at works of art and you're trying to identify emotions, or you're doing an activity for, you want them to create an artwork based on emotion. This is a good place to start and get your list from. Or if a child is feeling a certain way and they are having a hard time articulating that, you can use this to help them through their emotions. I use this with my daughter, and sometimes she can't really explain why she's feeling. My daughter has a lot of anxiety. And so when we can usually pinpoint the emotion that's triggering the anxiety, it helps a lot. And so this is a great tool to use. But we use it with works of art, too, as well, which is awesome. Like I already said, there's great benefits to social emotional learning, like improvement in the student's social and emotional skills, attitudes, relationships, academic performance, perceptions of classroom and school climate, decline in student anxiety, behavior problems, and substance use, and then long-term improvements in their skills, their attitudes, their pro-social behavior, and academic performance. So it's a no-brainer. But how do we do this in our classroom? How do we create an environment that is good for social emotional learning? It's something that we're not really born with. This is something that we have to work on. We have to develop, and we need modeling. And one of the best ways to help your students with social emotional learning is to help yourself with social emotional learning. So when you take your own social emotional learning into your own hands and you read about it, you research, you journal, you do all that stuff for yourself and figure out your strengths, figure out what your values, figure out your identity, that is going to give you the confidence, the awareness to help your students with it. So I think if I could give you any number one tip on how to do social emotional learning, is work on yourself. And then that will bleed into the rest of your environment. And so I that could be a whole other talk on how to do that. So I'm not going to do that. I have a podcast episode planned to do that, because when I made that bullet point, I was like, oh, I got more to say about that. I can't fit into this webinar. And then, building that SEL into the whole culture of your classroom and in your school, not just in your particular classroom, but, across the whole campus. I know a lot of art teachers, you only really have control over what happens in your four walls of your classroom, but you can influence the others through your work. All right, so here are 5 SEL competencies. So CASEL, the Collaboration for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, has done a lot of work on this. They've created some standards. They have done a lot of amazing research. They have a lot of amazing resources on their website that Kris posted in the chat. So you're welcome to go check them out if you haven't done that yet already. I know some states are already doing some having state standards for social emotional learning, which I think is awesome. But there's self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So we're going to kind of talk about each one, and then we're going to do some art connection activities that will help you experience what this might be like. So self-awareness is really the ability to understand your own thoughts, emotions, values, and how those things influence you and your behavior. And when you have healthy self-awareness, you can recognize your own strengths and limitations, which leads to confidence, purpose, and a growth mindset. And so in the art room, we can do this through having projects that explore personal interests. We can, have art connection experiences where students recognize, identify, and describe emotions. You can have art projects and art connection activities that explore personal identity, values, biases, purpose, and then figure out what your strengths are, experiment and play around and find your place, which will boost your self-confidence. And then really give students an understanding of who they are and their place in the world. So our curriculum, the World Mosaic curriculum, is a curriculum that is with an around the world approach. So every grade level has visit 7 continents over the course of their year, and they see 7 different works of art. They spend a lot of quality time looking at them, analyzing the artwork, doing some engaging activities around the artwork, and then doing a related project. The project is not sort of a cookie cutter thing, but they're more, I'm going to show you some examples of some of the projects that are specifically extra social emotional learning-y a little bit later. But so this discovering your place in the world, you have to learn about the world to know your place in it. And so we're making sure that the students are really exploring the world around them. And that helps with the social awareness strand as well. And self-management is how well a student manages their emotion, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. That sort of context switching of who you are in this situation versus who you are in another situation, how you communicate in those situations, how you handle yourself, how you manage your stress, how do you feel motivated in the world, how do you meet goals, all of that is under your self-management. I'm curious which one I was worst at as a 20-year-old. This one might have been it. Like, probably all of them. I don't know. My poor old self, she was amazing. She really was. I'm just using her as I feel bad for her suddenly as I'm using her as an example, but she worked really hard to get out of it. But anyway, so self-management is setting and accomplishing goals. You can do that in the art room. Reflecting on your learning experiences. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but that reflection piece is something that we often skip, especially in elementary, because you just don't have a whole lot of time. We finish the project and move on to the next project right away. But that process of reflecting on your learning is going to help you build that that understanding of yourself and how you work and what motivates you and what you're good at. All of that stuff is really important, and that we can start that in the elementary ages. Working in groups will help your students with self-management. I have working groups on here a lot of times because I am a huge proponent of group work. I was never a proponent of group work as a student, but as a teacher, I always force my kids to do that because it's so important that they learn how to work together, and they learn how to communicate, and they learn how to be a leader, and they learn how to, really learn their place in a group and how to be with other people. And a lot of people hate that, students hate that, but in the end, it's so very important for their learning. So
I giggle, Cindy, because like that's where I shine, is working in a group, because I knew that I wasn't the smartest, but I knew that I was creative, and I knew that I was collaborative and cooperative. So if I was in a group with somebody who was really smart, I could help them be creative, and then we would just nail a presentation. So working in groups helps those that aren't the smartest, but it also helps those smarty pants, because it helps them build on a skill set that they're not so good at. I used to just always advocate for arts for the learning challenged, but it is for the super smart people too, because they tend to be like, I want to do it myself because I want to get it right. Yep. But life doesn't really work that way. So, I've eaten up your time, so I'm sorry, but that one,
no, that's just good. It's such a testament to how important it is. Because that's how we work in the world, like you don't, very few people have a job where it's just them and they don't have to work with other people. So also developing planning and organizational skills. I think that is something that, is taught in school, but that's a really important one as well. And then the student ownership over the learning process, that when the student is involved in the learning process through reflection, through, every step of the way, they take ownership of it, and then that makes it, they're more likely to be engaged in it if they have a voice. So that's another thing that we can do in the art room. So we have responsible decision making. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but how to make caring and constructive choices in a variety of situations. And then, I think that what I really like about sort of the quote on this slide is evaluating the pros and cons of your actions. Like these are, really making a decision just takes a lot out of them. And a lot of people get really stuck in decisions. A lot of people will just make decisions immediately and then they have to suffer the consequences of it. So there needs to be some sort of balance. I think we can help our kids through that. And in the art room, we can do that through giving them activities for critical thinking skills, curiosity and experimentation in a safe environment. And then looking at art, analyzing it, discussing it, and talking about it will help them develop those critical thinking skills. Research has said that students who do visit more museums and participate in museum programs have higher critical thinking skills. It will increase their critical thinking the more that they do that. Analyzing different perspectives of, if you're thinking about an artwork, you're thinking about the perspective of the artist, of the person in it, you're thinking about the perspective of the other students in your classroom. All of that is happening and you're seeing all the points of view, and that gives them a safe space to sort of practice those sort of skills before they're forced to do them, in serious situations. And then social awareness, and then the next one is, I always get these two, relationship skills. Yeah. So they're to me, they're really similar, but, helping the student ability to understand and empathize with other people, helping them listen to viewpoints, experiences from people of different backgrounds. And that is really very, very important to us at Art Class Curator. And so you'll find that our curriculums have art that is very, very diverse from a lot of different types of people, in a lot of different places and across different times and about different things, because we want to make sure that students have the opportunity to see things from lots of perspectives and be able to really explore that. And then to see, if they're looking at an artwork of documenting something from across the world, they can see the feelings, they can learn how to identify them, they can learn to empathize with that person, and that's going to create just a better world.
And Cindy, this is where like equity and diversity fall in as like a district or a school initiative. And it's really big on a lot of administrators' like lists. And the great part is art teachers can be leaders in how to do it in a safe way, in a smart way, in a teachable way, that is just makes students aware of other cultures and doesn't necessarily like put an emphasis on like the bad going on. And so right now we're getting a lot of principals and curriculum supervisors that like really raise their eyebrows when we start talking about this particular part of the curriculum. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, a lot of the things that districts are really thinking about right now, the social emotional learning, the diversity, these are things that we were thinking about 100% of the way creating this curriculum. So those are your really good talking points when you want to sell this to your administration to help them get this for you and your students. I think I got group work on here again. I just wanted to put group work everywhere, but and then so we're working on empathy and the social awareness and your place in the world and compassion, all those things. And then also relationship skills. So how do you communicate with someone? How do you listen? How do you cooperate and collaborate? All of those things are super important. Okay, so those are oh wait, here's this slide. Okay. And we do that through, again, group work, collaborative projects, classroom discussions and critiques, and then creating a classroom culture of collaboration and community. All right, so we're gonna do experience an art connection lesson that incorporates all of this stuff. So we're gonna look at an artwork and I'm gonna give you some time to really kind of think about it and talk about it. And we're gonna do that through a tool that we call Reflect Connect. And this is a lesson straight from the curriculum. So this is in the 5th grade North America unit. So like I said, there's K through 5. It's a K through 5 curriculum, and they visit 7 continents on each one. All right. So Oh, our curriculum is divided into engage, create, and reflect. So we're going to talk about engage first, then we're going to talk about create, and then we're going to talk about reflect. And so the engage step is where we're discussing the works of art. We're doing engaging activities to it, like maybe they're writing a poem about it, maybe they are maybe they're doing a little group activity around it. Maybe they're doing a kinesthetic activity. So the engage step has a lot of ways to connect with the work of art. That's not just discussion. That's not just you telling them about the work of art and then you moving on to the project, that they're really spending a lot of time connecting with it. That's why we call it that art connection. And so the activity that we're going to do today is we're going to look at this artwork by Augusta Savage. Now, I usually don't put the title on the slides because I don't want people to Google it. So I forgot to not put the title on the slide. So I have to promise me not to Google it to get information. I want you to only use what you have in you to respond to this artwork. And so we're going to use this Reflect Connect worksheet, which is 4 steps. And I learned about this process. There's this amazing podcast I listened to called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. And they read Harry Potter as if it's like a Bible. It's really amazing. But they go through chapter by chapter, and then they do a spiritual practice at the end with the text. So they read the text, through symbolism or different things. And so they do one called Lectio Divina, which is I think an ancient like Christian way of reading the Bible. So they start with the narrative, where they just explore the story, and then they get deeper. They talk about the symbols, then they talk about how it connects to your life, and then you lead into how, what you're going to do differently after you have had this experience. So it's a way to teach our students that they can have emotional experiences with works of art. They can learn from them, because I've had many experiences where I've been in front of a work of art. I have explored it. I have had emotional reaction to it. And then I left it and I changed something about my life. Maybe I realized I wasn't having enough joy in my life, and then I did something differently. Or one artwork, I completely changed my degree. I was applying to PhDs in art history. I'd already sent my applications off, and then I had this experience with a work of art, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. I need my degree in art education. So I've had these sort of experiences and I want our students to understand that these artworks can play a part in their lives beyond just something pretty or something that you do on the weekend, but that you can have really powerful connections with works of art. So with all that said, we're going to look at this artwork together. And so what I want you to do now is just to tell me a little bit about what do you think is going on in this artwork. So we're doing step 1, which is narrative. So it says, what is going on? Write your own paragraph that tells the story of the artwork. So you can just use the chat and tell me your ideas of what you think is happening in this work of art. I'll give you a second to do that.
I see that it's 1939, well, but it looks a little bit like he has a cell phone in his hand.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we got a guy in the front and he's holding something. I wish I could zoom in on it. Unfortunately, this artwork no longer exists. They destroyed it after the state fair that it was created for. So we only have a few photographs of it. It's going to kind of awkwardly give you time to write. Not awkward.
Isn't that crazy though, that somebody would work that hard on a sculpture and then it would get destroyed?
Yeah. It's wild. Okay, so we have some of our theories here. Letitia says there's a person who is a leader for voices to be heard. So yeah, if you look at all of them, all of the, well, all except for the guy in the front, all have their voices open, or their mouths open, other voices. So Rachel says it makes her think of a chorus and collectivity. So we haven't, Anna noticed that there's an arm and they are, oh wait, no, that wasn't Anna. Charlene noticed they're on an arm and they're standing on an arm. Yeah, Charlene, I shouldn't give the title. That was a rookie mistake. Don't give the title because lift every voice and sing. You'll realize you're like, oh, I know what that is. Yeah, so that the title is the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And so we have, June says it reminds her of generations of bondage. Kelly says the journey from slavery. Ooh, Victoria says the people descending reminds her of all of the stages of life. I love that.
And he's holding a foot pedal, it says.
Yeah, I should know what he's 100% holding, but that would make sense.
Yeah.
Ooh, so Rachel says the strength of the group to encourage those who need support. So all coming together, supporting each other. So what is the man in the front? So we have some theories on the people. What is the man in the front's role here? Yeah, Letitia is that the harp shape. We can, if you just think about a harp, you just hear just this really beautiful, sweet song, The ideas on the man in front. Julia, yeah, the column, they look like Roman columns, their dresses do. So the man in front seems like he is listening and enjoying. What else could he be doing there? And this is just kind of, if you haven't had much training in leading art discussions, you'll see I'm not really providing any sort of information for you. And I'm doing that on purpose because I want that information to come from you. And we do give sort of some talking points to the teachers. We give some background information about the artwork, but really the most important information that you can get from an art discussion comes from your students, comes from the people in the discussion. And if I were to start giving you information, it might start, you might shut down your creativity and coming up with your own meanings.
Cindy, I love what you have said in the past too, is that the voice of the person viewing the art is equally as important as the artist. Like that was really profound to me because, as somebody who looks at art and, being an honest to God student of art, my brain does instantly give the artist the power because they have created it. But that isn't necessarily true because if I'm looking at it and it invokes a feeling or a thought or whatever, certainly I'm entitled to my opinion, and it goes back to sort of both self-awareness and social awareness. I can accept what the artist is putting out in front of me and what it says on the artist's statement, but how it made me feel, I can own that too. So I love that.
Yeah, I think that probably upsets some artists when I say that, but really, when the artwork leaves the artist's hands, it becomes the viewers. It's whatever you make of it, and I might have a completely different experience because we all come in with our biases. We all come in with our background experiences. We come in with our trauma. We came in with what we had for lunch that day. I mean, all of that's going to impact our experience with the work of art. And a lot of people think that looking at a work of art that they're missing something important and they're not really able to do it. But really it's all about just letting yourself be creative, letting yourself explore, and giving yourself the freedom and the confidence to do that. You're not going to be wrong. Excellent. Okay, so we have a lot of our interpretations here, a lot of our just the interpretations of the story. And I love that you're saying Julia says it looks like he might jump off. He's full of potential energy. There's a lot of other amazing thoughts here. So we're going to move on to our next step. So we've kind of figured out what this is all about. This is a sculpture inspired by the poem Lift Every Voice and Sing, which then became a song, which is now called the Black National Anthem. It was written by James Weldon Johnson in 1900. And then it was first sung as part of Abraham Lincoln's birthday celebration in 1900 by a group of school children. There's tons of YouTube videos of beautiful performances of it. In this lesson, we give students the lyrics and they interpret the poem too, and then connect that poem to the artwork. So we have more than just this activity as well. And then the harp includes 12 singers. And then that is according to what we've researched on the artwork is the hand of God that's holding them all up. And there are the strings of the harp. So now let's move on to the symbols. So we already noticed a lot of symbols. A lot of you went straight to some of the symbols. So you noticed the columns of the dresses, that how they looked like Roman columns, which then made that then feel really strong. We had other people mentioned different types of symbols present, but what other symbols are you noticing here in the sculpture? I kind of gave away the hand of God when I could have. So that's why I gave information a little bit too soon.
I was really happy though, because at one point I was gonna, there's this fear of always being wrong. And you've clearly said, don't worry if wrong, right, whatever, but it's just instinctive to be nervous that you're going to say the wrong thing. But I thought that I felt like I saw the hand, I wasn't necessarily attributing it to God, but then when you said that, I'm like, oh, right answer.
I do give a little bit of information because kids really want to hear it, but I just have to tell them, this is information we have. It doesn't mean that you're wrong if you had a different idea.
Right.
So yeah, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to make sure I get to everything else. But this activity can take as long, this is one of those activities that can take a good 20, 30 minutes in person. And then online, it takes a little bit longer because there's a little bit of a wait for the typing. So any other symbols, I'd love to hear that as well. So we had the columns, we had the hand of God. Y'all talked about how the people, there's another one y'all mentioned, the people behind or the people from the past. So that's a symbol of supporting putting everybody together in the community. All of that we're connecting to symbols too. And then our next one, and so this is kind of a more personal one. So you can share in the chat or you can just kind of think it depends on how vulnerable you want to be with this group of strangers who you can't see their faces. But the next one is connection. And what does this artwork remind you of in your own life? Where do you see your life reflected in this artwork? And that's a really important thing for us to think about at Art Class Curator is how we develop personal connections to work of art. And we can't always find one. You're not going to relate to everything, but when students relate to an artwork, then they're going to remember it more. It's going to become a part of them. I've heard artworks described as old friends. They're things that come with you in your life and that you can reflect on and refer to, and they bring you joy to think about. And when you make that personal connection, we can do that. Oh, Charlene, I love that all the teachers banding together to help our kids through this difficult time. Yes. This year has been such it's a year of isolation, but also a year of just epic community of people supporting other people. And so, the answers to this is going to depend on the child. So a student, one of your Black students, is going to have a much deeper personal connection than I could ever have with this work of art. And so this is giving all of your students a space to have that. And then they can share. I never force them to share these personal connections because I think it should be up to the kid if they want how vulnerable they want to get. But then the process of discovering the connection is really important. And so you might have thought of your connection. Thank you for Charlene for sharing yours. And then the next one, and so we could stop at personal connection. I think that would be awesome. But then I love about this Lectio Divina that I learned about on the Harry Potter podcast is the next step is, what are you going to do differently in your life because of your experience with this work of art? Is there anything that you're going to carry with you as you go into your life? And I've done this activity with adults many times with different works of art, and I always get really profound answers. But teachers in our class curator community have been using this with their upper elementary, their middle school, their high school kids, and the kids can do it. You know, some of the kids are going to have a little bit of a struggle. So yeah, I wouldn't grade them on this of like how well they did it. This is a really hard, I think it's a challenging thing to do. But it's just really important that they learn that and then they practice that sort of skill, because, you know, when it's so important to think about like reading and looking at artwork and listening to music and how we can take from all of those arts and apply them in our lives in different ways. You know, even if it is Harry Potter, I can learn a lesson from Harry Potter that's going to help me in my life. And the same is true for works of art. Oh, I love that, Charlene. Yeah, and it does live on forever. That is fantastic. That is so cool. Okay, so I hope you thought of some sort of lesson. Oh, Lori has one: to be a better listener. Beautiful. So, you know, I challenge you too, when you're in an art museum, if you can ever go to one ever again, that you try this out, you know, in front of a work of art and really spend the time. Okay, so it's already 3:47. I knew this activity would take a long time, but I really wanted it to sink in. And so you really got to experience what it's like to have one of these experiences rather than just hear me sort of a lecture about it. So in this lesson, and it's a 5th grade lesson, they do this activity, but then they also, they look at the lyrics of the poem. So they can analyze the lyrics and use that as in a text. And there's something weird happening with my slide, I just noticed. And then so they see we have a little worksheet where they analyze the lyrics and then they connect it to the work of art. And then they have there's a YouTube video you can link and listen to people singing it. And then they listen to the music in the background and think about what the music sounds like and how the different instruments could add to symbolism too. And then they can journal. If they were to write a song that represents something in their life, what would that song be? Or they can even think about what song they know that would represent their own life, and then they could illustrate that as well. So, you know, they're really forming deep connections with these works of art that are going to go beyond just your classroom and just as a thing that they're like learning about that day, but that they're learning something about themselves through the activity. So that's one of the activities, and you can see we did self-awareness, we did lots of different skills in that one art discussion. You know, we're doing listening when we're having the art discussion together. You know, there's all sorts of just really minute things happening within that experience. So here's some of the other activities. So every lesson, there's 42 units in World Mosaic, and each one has at least 3 different engaging activities for the work of art that's being focused on. So it's poetry, it's all sorts of things. So I'm gonna show you just a few more. We have the I am character poem, where they write from the perspective of the artwork. And so they write, I am, I see, I hear, I say, I feel, I wonder, I want, I dream, I am. So this is one from your 4th or 5th graders. Like for your kinders, we have one that's like, write a question to the artwork. So they are age specific, you know, for your littles. It's not, you're not gonna have to like take this and give it to a kindergartner. We wouldn't make you do that. No worries. So collaborate, you know, the social skills and group challenges. We have a design challenge where kids have to take empty boxes and try to recreate this artwork and work together to sort of build it. So it's a fun building spatial awareness type of activity, but they also have to work together. Oh, this was supposed to be earlier, but there's some questions about the songs that they listen to with that. There's a drawing game where that one student can see the artwork and the other student can't. And then the student who can see it has to describe it to the person who can't see it, and then that person has to draw it. So they're working on communication skills, they're working on their visual literacy, they're working on how do you, talk back and forth to figure out the language that you needed. Like one time I did this and there was a tea kettle in the artwork, but the student drawing didn't know what a tea kettle was. And so the student describing was like, she doesn't know what a tea kettle is. I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, you're gonna have to think of another way to describe it for her. And so, they're going back and forth working on communication and listening and all of that. So it's a really fun one that we do in the curriculum. So you can see there's a lot of different engaging activities that you can do with works of art to add a lot of these extra social emotional learning into your classroom. And then we also can do that through our projects. Now we're naturally going to be doing goal setting, problem solving. Those are things that are built into art as a whole, but we also can boost our social emotional learning by making the artwork about really connected to the student. So things like, sorry, a slide I wasn't expecting. I'm going to tell you when that happens. Yeah, I've already said these things. Okay. So yeah, I used Kris has this in front of her. This was her example from this project, and I think it's beautiful. So a self-portrait where they kind of write about themselves and they incorporate them about themselves. This is Letitia. This is K through 5. So it's a full curriculum for K through 5. So yes, K through 2 is in there. So here's another one where they study the Guatemalan worry dolls. I think this is 3rd grade, if I remember correctly, where they will study the worry dolls, they talk about them, and then they talk about, what do you do when you feel anxious or worried? And the worry dolls, they put under the pillow, you tell your worries to it, and then they sort of take away your worries. There's a great children's book about it, which I hate the title, Silly Billy. I don't want to call emotions silly, but the actual book itself is really good. I just really hate that title. And then they, do some journaling. And then they design their own sort of comforting stuffed animal that they can make for themselves. So you can see how the social emotional learning is sort of woven in to all aspects of it, from the engaging activities at the beginning to the actual project, that we're making sure that the student has a voice in what they're creating and that they are personally connecting with their works of art. And then there's, I don't know, I have this extra artwork on here. I think it's because it also has expressions. These are 2 of the different artworks, but this is where your kinders are like looking at really dramatic facial expressions from Maori sculpture and also Maori dance. And then they like practice making the faces, and then they make their own facial expression. So there's one where the kids have to make the different facial expressions for each other and then draw them, and they look in a mirror and like look at what their face does and the different emotions. So just a lot of little things like that. And reflection, we make sure you want to have a lot of reflection at the end. And so we have, that's really adding in that extra social emotional learning too, where they're thinking about their journey, thinking about the goals they set. Did they meet their goals? Did they not? How can they make it better? But what's great about this elementary curriculum is that it has a lot of really fun learning in there. We have like gallery walks, and there's ones where they do awards for like most likely to whatever, like their creatures. There's all sorts of fun reflection activities built in. They write stories or legends. One of them, they make a comic strip about their artwork, because they make a cat, like a mummy cat, and then they make a comic strip of the 9 lives of their cats. There's a lot of reflection that they do afterwards. That's not just, what did you do? What would you do differently? What do you like about it? That sort of thing. That it's a little bit more fun than that for your elementary kids. So all of that's happening, and I know it's just a short taste of what is in the curriculum, but just to give you a really quick overview, because we're almost out of time and I want to make sure we get to the pricing and stuff too, and answer your questions. I'll stay after and answer any questions if you have them after. But this is a K through 5 curriculum, 7 units per grade, 42 total units, and it has an art around the world approach. These are all things I've said. If you're interested and you want to know more and you want to dive deeper into what is all in it, because we really took the social emotional learning piece today. But if you want the full spiel, you're welcome to book a call with us. You'll get a survey in your email this afternoon, and you can schedule a demo and we'll just walk you through it step by step. We also have some other webinars where we kind of went through in more detail. We're happy to send you those recordings as well, so you can really make sure you get all the information that you want. But I'm just I have all these slides that we don't have time to cover. So this is just some of the artwork that they'll look at. 42 different artworks. Each one has PowerPoints, it has all the worksheets that you need, it has all of those learning activities we talked about, the art project, supply list. It's all national art standards aligned. And so it's a full curriculum. It's everything you need for your K-5 kids. So I'm going to skip. I didn't know how fast or slow I would be, so I have a bunch of extra stuff in the end. So for you, the lessons are or for your students, the lessons are super fun. They have multiple learning intelligences, most learning modalities. They're going to get a comprehensive education with both the art connection piece and your studio art, and they're going to work on all those skills. For you, it's going to save you time. You're going to have all of the handouts, all of the PowerPoints, everything that you're going to need. It's very flexible and easy to use, works with your learning management systems. And for your district, so when you want to convince them to buy this for you, it's going to have all your standards covered. It's going to have your diversity initiatives met because of that, 42 different artworks from all around the world. And then it's going to support your social emotional learning initiatives, your literacy initiatives, visual literacy, all those things are covered. And we do have a handout with this information on it if you'd like to share it with your administrators. It's at artclasscurator.com/flyer. I'm typing it, but I misspelled it 3 times already. There we go. And so you get the full curriculum, 42 units. There's over 200 individual downloads with all your worksheets on all your lesson plans and your PowerPoints and all of that. All of that is in that subscription. And it is $1,000 for your subscription. And I'll let Kris talk because I think I started to say her part.
No, you're totally fine. That was fantastic. And no. And you know what? Honestly, we don't want to miss the pricing because we don't want to make it look like we don't want to tell you what the pricing is. So it's fine that we only have a couple minutes left. And often what we have found so far, this is brand new. We launched it in January. And what we've found is that most art teachers panic a little bit like, oh my gosh, I don't want to give up my art materials budget. Right now, there is a lot of principals, curriculum supervisors, districts that have money to spend on curriculum that isn't going to be part of your art materials. I have yet to run into a principal or a curriculum supervisor that thinks the pricing is out of line. We know that often art teachers, pay for something out of their pocket, and this is out of line for that. We don't expect somebody to spend $1,000 on their classroom, and you shouldn't. But your administrators, the only thing that might take them aback is that you haven't asked before. But when they start to hear how it partners with the district's initiatives, it resonates, and they're often willing to figure out how to buy it. And if not this year, for next year. So please feel free to set up a time to hear more about it. You can invite anybody you would like from your district or from your school. There is added value with how it is delivered, because it's delivered on a subscription called Nasco Educate, and it comes at no additional charge. You can purchase Nasco Educate on its own, but it comes with Art Class Curator. So I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time. If you have questions, we can stay for a few more minutes, and feel free to ask. But otherwise, my email, I've typed it in a couple times and I'll put it in one more time. It's kbakke@nascoeducation.com. Absolutely shoot me an email. Feel free to ask questions first. Otherwise, I'm happy to spend a few minutes going through some stuff with you, or if you want me to take a full hour and really take you through each thing, it's amazing. And I feel like I have yet to find somebody that doesn't like it. And when you show it to your principals and talk about the, like I said, the SEL part and the cross-curricular part, you end up with somebody who will start thinking that this might be worth it for you as well. So I don't see any more questions coming through, but feel free to email me. Cindy, what a great job. I loved this take. I mind mapped again all the great stuff and all the things that I've learned, and I would love to chat more. Please feel free to watch again on Wednesday if you have, if you are K to 12, because that will be the high school. If you're middle, you probably came to the right one, but you can come to Wednesdays and watch the perspectives and kind of decide which one fits for a middle school curriculum. And we will be doing more. In May, we are going to absolutely focus on some of the making. So please come back for that. And again, reach out if you have any questions. But thank you so much for all that you do and for taking some time out. And Cindy, thank you very much as well.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.